Well, hello everyone and welcome. Welcome to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show that is on Voice America and has been on Voice America for 24 years. I started in 2002. I've been on many networks, all different kinds of different, and you can look up my website and see all that. But I've been on Voice America consistently and the longest. And I'm proud of it. This is the program that shows you how to turn your problems into solutions and your obstacles into opportunities and make your dreams come true. And today we're talking about making a major change in your life when you're older.
Mhm.
And how do you handle that? So, we're talking to Virginia Deluca. She is a Boston-based psychotherapist, and she spent decades helping other people navigate grief and loss and those unexpected life changes. But when her 60-year-old husband abruptly left, saying he wanted children, Virginia was forced to confront her own heartbreak and the unraveling of the life that she once envisioned. In her memoir, If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets, Virginia shares the path to rebuilding her future. She offers a timely and honest reflection on resilience, on healing, and the unexpected beauty that can follow even the most painful endings. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I just want to put this in a timeline. How many years ago was this?
So, Perry left 2014. So that's
Okay,
10 years ago.
okay. And so we're going to talk about your journey from then until now.
Hmm.
Because really, the purpose of this show is to say to people, listen, people go through this and they get through it, and listen to what happens so you can learn and grow and be inspired, you
Hmm.
know, by what can happen even in the hardest of times. So, what led you to write the book? And when did you start writing the book? Right afterwards or a couple years later?
So, I am a psychotherapist, as you mentioned. One of the things that I also do is I journal a lot. And one of the ways that I have encouraged clients and other ways that I also encourage myself is when things are pretty overwhelming or emotions are sort of unclear. I really am very careful about journaling. So he left, I started journaling. I opened the computer and I called it Perry Leaving Journal, something like that.
Yeah.
And it started with, I don't understand what's happened. I don't understand how it happened. I don't understand why it happened. And so I just wrote in those feelings. And I also added in any text, any emails, transcribed phone calls. And I figure it's just sort of like shooting film. I don't have to make any judgments about it. I
Yeah.
just want to write it down. So that's
Mhm.
how it started.
And it was very fresh when you wrote it, right? I mean, you kind of wrote it as it was happening. So it
Absolutely.
wasn't like you waited 4 years and said, oh, I'm going to reflect. Yeah. So this is all taken from that, plus reflections from years after that.
So for me, I call it an outside process, I mean, an external processor. I like to talk to people. Oh, this happened, and then this happened, and oh my goodness, he said this, and oh, I said that. That can. I had a very close friend who said, as she listened to this, for years, basically said, maybe you should write a memoir. And
Yeah.
so when I retired from my agency work, I joined a memoir incubator
Hmm.
program at Grub Street and had a wonderful, wonderful instructor.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
So there's the thing about writing a memoir versus a journal is you have the I character and the I narrator. The I character is what happens. And then this happened, and then he said this, and oh my goodness, I feel that. The
Hmm.
I narrator basically tries to make sense of it.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's like you're telling a story and and as though it's a third person, even though it's really you. Yeah. Yeah, that's hmm. I'm going to ask you a takeaway. Usually I ask a takeaway at the end, but I want to ask you for one at the beginning. For somebody just tuning in and saying, "Oh, I wonder what she's going to say for the next hour." What's one thing you'd say to them right off the bat that they should do before they do anything else? When they've either going through a tough divorce or loss that's sudden that they absolutely didn't expect and they were shocked.
Um, we have a lot of unexpected parts of our lives, right? That happens a lot. We cannot control those events, but we can, in some ways, control how we react.
Mhm.
So, that's really would be my takeaway.
Yeah.
How I think about things. If I think I have had a really raw deal, then my feelings tend to be angry and bitter and, you know, upset. If I really basically say, wow, life is just weird and wild, and I'm
Yeah.
curious about it, then I
Right.
feel much better.
Yeah. And I would add to that and ask your opinion as a therapist. I think also, because this is something I've done, is I think it's forever and nothing's forever. So instead of thinking about it like it's always going to be like this and I always have to blah, 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 it's like, well, this is the way it is right now. I don't know the way it's going to be in 6 months. And that has helped me
Yeah.
because otherwise you box yourself into a future that you really don't know if it's going to be there.
That's right. I often say we can't predict the future. We really don't know what's going to happen in both positively and ways that upset us. Yeah.
And also, as you said, if you're just aware, if you're really aware of your situation, the tough part and the blessing, the realistic part, being very realistic, and also having the hope can really make a difference. I just want to share something because it just came to my mind. I interviewed a man recently by the name of Sid Stockdale, and he said something I have to share. He wrote a story about his father, who was a commander and was shot down in Hanoi and was in the Hanoi Hilton, where John McCain was for 8 years. And he left and had a life after that. And what was his message? His message was always be realistic. Look at things, but then always have hope.
Mhm.
And he said the people there who kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to go home in a week. I'm going to go home next month." They didn't do as well. He said, you look at this is where it is now, and this is it. But then you believe there's something better. And I just, that really struck me. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think it's very important. We want to have hope, right? But we don't want to be delusional.
Right.
We want to
Right.
we want to really sort of say, okay, this is the way life is right now. Um, and I didn't expect it, whatever it is that's happening, whether it's, medical stuff or whether it's heartbreak or whatever is happening. And you sort of say, okay, this is where it's at. And I'm going to hope that I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to make it easier, or I'm going to be able to find a way to soothe whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what you're saying. That's where the hope comes in, where
Mhm.
you're saying, there'll be a way.
That's right.
And I think sometimes, Virginia, things present themselves that you didn't expect that give you away. Did
Hmm.
you do
Like,
like
say,
someone comes into your life or something happens and you say, wow, that's really going to help me. And you
yes,
didn't expect that.
that's right.
So that's
Yesterday,
part of the leaving that hope open.
yeah, yesterday I
Yeah.
was walking down the street in Portsmouth. I was just visiting a friend, actually, and in the gray in the cement was somebody had written, "We are all damaged. It's it's how we still love with a broken heart that matters. And
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
that I loved that. I wrote
Yeah.
it down on my little piece of paper. It was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's really how we still love with a broken heart that matters. So,
Right. Right. And also looking at what's really important, right?
yeah,
Those basic things like I want love, I want peace in my life, I want joy. Yeah, really, really good. We're going to take a break, but before we do, if people would like to talk to you, how can they do that? And how can they find the book and how can they connect with you?
sure. I have a website. It's Virginia DeLuca. It has my email there. So, virginiadeluca.com. And it has all sorts of contact information. And the book can be purchased by major retailers. Um, right now,
Okay.
it happens to be on Amazon ebook and all the other ebooks for 99 cents right now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
for a
And
few days.
remember everybody that this show is evergreen. So you may be listening to the show a year from now or 2 years from now. So hopefully it'll still be there and you can still contact Virginia. But just want to let you know the timing on this because these shows stay online and they're wonderfully inspirational and they last. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and we are talking to Virginia DeLuca, who is a Boston-based therapist who spent decades helping other people deal with grief and loss. And at the age of 60, after 14 years of marriage, her husband decided he wanted to have children and asked for a divorce. And that departure was followed by months of angst, so dramatic for her. And we'll talk more about that when we come back. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamerica.com, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and we are back. We are talking to Virginia DeLuca. She's talking about her memoir, If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets. You might say, well, what does that mean? Well, at the age of 60, after 14 years of marriage, her husband decided he wanted to have children and asked for a divorce. And that was followed by a lot of angst and trauma for Virginia. She is also a Boston-based psychotherapist, so she works with this. So she certainly had the tools and the skills. It's a little different when it happens to us, but again, you do have the tools. And so, really happy for you to be here and to share. So, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, how you got through it. What were some of the tools that got you through it? And maybe before that question should be, how did people respond?
Yeah, so the what was really unusual about that is that he was 60 years old. So he wanted he had not had a family of his own. I had three grown kids from my first marriage. So he really wanted to have, that's what he at the saying he really wanted, and I had never heard about that before. So people were very judgmental, definitely, of him. He wants to have babies at 60. How old is he going to be when they're graduating high school? So there was a lot of judgment about who he was.
And
Um,
also that he didn't share it in the beginning.
and that there was no lead up, there was
Right.
no sort of, wow, we've been fighting for years and this is, we finally ended. It was never like that. So he really clearly had some kind of secret life, and I didn't know about it, obviously, because he was secret, and I don't know for how long it was. For me,
Mm.
it created in I was a mess, basically. I was a mess. I was crying, I was very upset, I was so much blaming myself. How could I have missed this? I
Mm.
am a psychotherapist. I'm supposed to listen to people. How could I have missed this? So
I
that was
have a question about that, Virginia, now that it's 11 years out.
Mhm.
Do you know what it was you missed now in retrospect? Do you know what the clues were now?
Really. I know that he was, as I say, I'm an external processor. He tended to be an internal processor, so he didn't, he didn't just burst out with feelings and thoughts and stuff like that, something like that, maybe. But I don't really know.
Yeah,
Um,
because he wasn't really sharing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Interesting. So, how did you get through it?
So the first thing, and I really would recommend this to everybody, is you don't do this alone. People feel a lot of shame when they are left or dumped or what, like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me that somebody didn't love me?
Right,
And so when people are feeling shame, they often don't talk about it. They kind of want
right.
to hide it themselves. And I would recommend talk to everybody. I obviously would say get a therapist because I'm a therapist, but you don't need to get a therapist. You need a friend. Um, and you want to share that with people. It's too hard to take in that kind of loss by yourself. Um, I think writing is a wonderful thing, or if writing is not your thing, any kind of expression around, art, doing artwork, any of that kind of stuff. Um, you want to really, grief is a powerful emotion, and you need to sort of sit with it a little bit. You can't just pretend like, oh, it's okay, no big deal. It's huge.
Yeah,
Uh,
because
so
many times when you do, you just get numb, right? If you don't talk about it.
And
Yeah,
people do tend to do whatever they can do not to feel the feelings. So
yeah,
people, as you say, go numb,
yeah,
or they might
yeah.
do substances, or they might, there's a lot of ways to try to avoid feelings.
How did being a psychotherapist help you?
Well, I knew that. Like, I knew you really don't want to avoid the feelings.
Right,
I mean, obviously, I don't need to, you don't need to be feeling the feelings and expressing them all day long, but you need to be able to basically acknowledge the fact that you're really having a very hard time. You might be functioning very well. You might be doing all the right things, taking care of your responsibilities, especially people who are struggling and doing a divorce or a sudden loss with young kids.
Mm,
It's very hard, but you need to acknowledge that it's really a big deal and you have to take care of yourself, however that is. You can't expect too much from yourself. You need to
mm,
pay attention to the fact that you need to eat, you need to drink
mm.
water, you need to sleep as if you can, and ask for help as much as is possible.
Yeah. And you also do suggest writing, which, said, and again, just you can just, as you did, just write for yourself. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, it can just be what we call it like dumping, right? Dumping on paper, just whatever comes in.
Yes. There's a somebody named Julia Cameron. She recommends
Yeah. I interviewed Julia. I interviewed her years ago. The Way
she's
of
a
the Writing. What's the name of her book? The
uh,
something,
yeah,
I'll look it up. Go
um
ahead.
but did something. I actually read her book decades or so, and I've used it all my life then since I started reading. She does something called morning pages, and you
Yes,
write
it's called The Artist's Way.
this
The
way.
Artist's Way. Yeah.
And
Yes, morning pages.
so I really recommend it. I talk about it all the time. I gave all those books, I give them out to as many people as I can, um, because it really does help you. Um, and
Mm.
so three handwritten pages, in the morning, first thing in the morning, or if you're not a morning person, late at night. Um, and it can be silly things like, I don't really want to be doing this. This is so ridiculous. I hate writing. This is the dumbest thing. I can't even read the writing, blah, blah, blah. That's all you have to do. At the end of 3 pages, you just close it, you go on with your day. Things will change. I really believe that. It really helps you organize your own thoughts. I think
Mm.
that we really, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, and then I have a question. Go ahead.
I think that we really need to know, I guess part of for, it's like all love is a risk, right?
Mm.
No matter,
Yes.
we all love, we all get attached to
Yeah.
lots of,
Yeah.
to pets, to houses, to
Yeah.
towns. All love is a risk. Um, and the only way to avoid that risk that is, not to love. And
Yeah.
that's a horrible way to live.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's really what I really remember. I remember saying that to myself. It
Yeah.
was a risk, it was very risky. And
Such an important point.
yeah,
Virginia, how do you help people deal with the anger? Because the anger is important. After you finish blaming yourself, then it's like, look what he did.
yeah.
And, and look at the effect. And I'm angry about that because he didn't bother to even tell me or give me any clue. And you have a right to be angry about that. I want you to talk about anger because I think anger is misunderstood. And I think people are very afraid of anger and it needs to be expressed but channeled properly.
Yeah, I mean, all the feelings, it's like you want to have a wide range of access to all your feelings. Anger is a big one. People are very confused about anger. You do not need to necessarily express your anger. You don't have to call people names. You don't have to physically, hurt people when you're angry. A lot of people confuse violence with anger at
Yes.
the same time. Um, but you do need to be able to sort of identify. It's okay to say, I am really angry. It doesn't mean that you're going to call the person that hurt you up and just swear at them. It means, no, I feel it. I feel angry. I was misused. I was mistreated. And you're just acknowledging to yourself that that's what's real. Or I feel really sad. It doesn't mean that you're weeping all day long. It means that you're sad. Um, the problem with feelings is that if when you box them down and try to tamp them down, they come they come out sideways. And maybe you suddenly are, you know, expressing anger, at the person who is serving you coffee or something. Um, so you just need to be honest with your own feelings as much as you possibly can. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's again, that's a hard one because a lot of us have been brought up, don't get angry. And I think what we should be taught, right, is it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to handle it in any way that hurts anybody physically, right? Or hurts anybody.
right.
This is a feeling that you have. So,
And as a you know, in as a shrink, we talk about emotional regulation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and we will feel dysregulated when we have difficult events in our lives. That's just true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we just have to get ourselves, as you said, back on track. So you said people can get your book on Amazon,
Yep.
and your website is Virginia DeLuca, DeLuca.com.
That's right. Yeah.
And they can also, I think you said, get your book through Amazon, and I think through your website too.
Yeah. So that, it's all the bookstores, all the well, they can't if they're not actually on the shelf, bookstores can order it wherever.
Which
Um,
is great.
yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Virginia about what the turning point was for her in terms of her own healing. How did that happen for her? So we're going to spend some time talking about that next. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show right here on voiceamerica.com. America's Voice. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone, and we are back. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show. And my guest is Virginia Deluca, who is a Boston based psychotherapist. She spent decades helping others navigate grief, loss, and unexpected life changes. Her memoir is If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets. And she shares the path to rebuilding her future, where at the age of 60, after 14 years of marriage, her husband wanted to have children and decided to have a divorce. So this was very shocking. So, Virginia, what was the turning point for you where you feel like, because it's been now 11 years.
Hmm.
What was the turning point like for you? When was that?
So, as I said, I was writing things like, and I called my journal Perry Leaving. And I started to, and then at a certain point, I was going to cross it out and say, uh, reacting to that Perry leaving. And then I changed it to Ginny flourishing. And
Oh,
I
very good.
the journal because my feeling is we don't know how much time, especially when we're in our 60s. Now I'm in my 70s, but we don't know how much longer we have. People call it the third, which I kind of like the way of saying the third because it could, who knows how long it could be. But I wanted to make sure that I still, I didn't want to, end my last third bitter, angry, feeling like I had been done wrong. So I wanted to really think about that. What was very important to me? Um, at that point, I was thinking, okay, what's really important to me? I had very young grandkids. It was like, okay, I really enjoy my grandchildren. I could put that in the positive point. I really enjoy my work. I really enjoy, treating clients and working with people. That goes in there. And I just kept focusing. I really have a wonderful collection and connection of friends and people. Those I need to nurture. I need to keep nurturing all of that community and relationships. That was very important. So I just kept creating those. What's really important? That's, yeah, I would love to go to Paris and travel through Europe, but, that's not the most important at this, at that moment, that kind of stuff. So that's
Mm.
how I sort of shifted.
Shifted more about you and what you want out of your life.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily, I was, I didn't want to necessarily replace with another person. I wanted to really, what's really important? I had been married twice. What's, what, what, you know, what do I count? So,
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, really focusing on what does work for me, what does make me happy.
hmm yeah.
Yeah. Did you develop some new hobbies or new things?
Well, I've always been a gardener, so that was really fun to do. I actually moved, at the time of that marriage, I was in New Hampshire. I was in Dover and the seacoast of New Hampshire. And so I moved down to Boston, where I had moved from Boston to New Hampshire to be with Perry, and then I moved back. So I had a nice wide circle of friends in Boston. I moved back to Boston, and moved all my work back into Boston. So that was very.
Do you feel like now that it's 11 years out, it's more faded for you than it was before? Is it much more healed because of time? I guess my real question is, does time heal? People say that it does it?
Oh yes, I think absolutely. But I also think you need to have other relationships. I don't think sitting not necessarily, I mean, I don't think just sitting down and waiting for time to pass. I mean, I think you need to be engaged with other people. I
Mm,
think we are a social being. And that doesn't necessarily mean party all the time. I'm actually kind of an introvert, but really being engaged with other people, I think is exceptionally important.
yeah.
Um,
I have to go back to your title, which is If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets. Did he have children?
So, yes, he did. So about 4 or 5 years after he left, he did call me and he said, "So do you remember when you told me that you wished me triplets?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Yeah, well, turns out I'm about to have twins." So,
Wow.
he had twins when he was 66.
Well, and I bet you were happy for him at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I laughed a little. It was karma.
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, So, so the turning point, it sounds like from what you're saying, doesn't come all at once. It's like it builds, and then you get to the other side.
Yeah, I think this is true for lots and lots of changes and as we age, there are many losses. We don't our bodies aren't don't operate the same ways. There's a lot of losses. So I think it's important to keep focusing and identifying what are my joys. I mean, you can get really, I mean, I can, maybe not everybody, but I can get wrapped up in getting the list done, doing the chores. And I think it's really important to find, what makes it, what gives me a feeling of joy. Um, so if anything, if all fails, it's usually the garden works. I'll buy flowers in the middle of winter in February for myself. Um,
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
yeah, I've read a lot about that, and I feel that. I feel flowers are healing, but gardening, I have friends who are gardeners, and it's so therapeutic. Your hands in the soil and helping things grow, live and grow.
Hmm.
Yeah, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk to people now, when they come to you with this kind of situation, and I'm sure you had that, not exactly, but a similar kind of abandonment situation, how do you counsel them? Is it all individual or, yeah, yeah, how do you counsel them?
Well, I do mostly individual work. Currently, I work on most people who come to therapy usually come because of some kind of loss. Um, and so we, going through some of that. I have a thing where I sort of say, we all carry all of our selves throughout our lifetime. So when Perry first left, I remember feeling like people talk about abandonment, I remember feeling like, oh, it's like I've been left in a shopping mall and my
Yeah,
mother forgot to keep me and find me. And I was, so that image of like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old
yes.
being alone. That was sort of my image. But we carry all these different selves as, sometimes I'm the sulky teenager. Sometimes I'm feeling like, oh, look, I'm so pretty. I have a nice ribbon in my hair. Though, those kinds of things. And I think really we talk a lot about that. Everybody is a little bit, I like my quote, a little bit damaged, right? And how we're going to really help and keep loving people, even though we're hurting, because that means everybody else is also hurting. And so we're looking at compassion.
Yeah.
We don't
It's
know
funny.
what to do.
I was at in an office recently, and there was a note on the wall, and it said, "Please wait in line patiently and be kind. Remember, we're short staffed now. and just remember to be kind. I thought that was very, very timely and very good.
That's right. And we don't really, when we're walking down the street, right, we don't necessarily share all the difficulties that we're experiencing at any given day. So we don't know what other people are going through either. So
And
I,
they may smile and tell you everything's great when it isn't.
Mhm.
I mean, how many times have you heard of people taking their own lives and you had no idea? I've heard
Mhm.
story after story, and people close to the people didn't know. So people know how to hide it pretty well, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really something to look at. It's so important to share, and that's something that Virginia's really talked about throughout. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, my question to Virginia is, how is life now? And
Mhm.
what do you want listeners to know? How have you rebuilt your life? And how has it brought you joy and the things that you really want? And so when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. All right. Virginia DeLuca's book is If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets. She is a Boston based psychotherapist, and she has spent decades and still is helping people navigate grief and loss and unexpected changes, which she had when her husband, who was 60 at the time, said he wanted to have children and left after being married to her. All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. You're listening to the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show. My guest is Virginia DeLuca. Her book is If You Must Go, I Wish You Triplets. And she is a Boston based psychotherapist. Her work is to help others navigate grief, loss, and unexpected life changes. And she needed to help herself a lot when she went through one. At the age of 60, after 14 years of marriage, her husband decided he wanted to have children and asked her for divorce. And that was 11 years ago. And it was shocking to her. And she rebuilt and repaired and rejuvenated. And she's written a memoir about it. And so, welcome back, Virginia. Let's talk about where you are now and maybe share a couple of stories of where clients have been who've been through something like this.
As I said, most people come into therapy because of some kind of loss.
Mhm.
And one way or the other. And many, many people have difficulty um, trying to figure out how to engage in relationships, especially if people are. So I just am thinking immediately of people who are in their, early 30s to 40s, that range. I really want to be in a relationship. I really want to, start having a family. I really, that has been a big, push for a lot of people. They will you often come to therapy around that. Um, and so there have been times when we've talked about, well, what does it really mean? What would happen if you had a relationship? So I think I often will start from there. Like, you really, everybody says, in the magazines, they all say, well, you have to know yourself in order to know somebody else. You have to love yourself in order to love. But what does that really mean for people? And so we really talk a lot about that sort of and I'm a therapist, so I always go backwards a little bit. Like, so what was it like for you? Because our first relationships are always based on, our early childhood, right? What is, so what do we carry from childhood that we're now using as an adult? And what should we throw out and what should we keep? And so I remember one person who came and that person had never been in a relationship at all and was post 40, had never held hands, had never kissed, had never
Mm.
um, and um, and so we really started very small, sort of, what does it mean? Can everybody were good friends, but they hadn't been able to move friend to love.
Yeah.
And so we talked a lot about that. Happily married, they ended up. So, and so that's, you know, this is a little plug for therapy. Therapy works. Uh,
If you're willing, right? You have to be willing to do the work too.
And also,
So,
you need to find somebody who you like. I mean, it's not an instant, it's not like I mean, sometimes you have to interview people until you feel comfortable.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, in where you are now, you're happy with your life. You're happy with what you're doing with your gardening and your work and
Mhm.
your children and grandchildren.
Yes. It's like having a relationship with myself. In many, many ways. That's the way that I sort of think about it. I am the mistress of my own life in a big way that is a different kind of way than being involved, being married. And I really enjoy it a lot. So I've always wanted to be a writer. So besides being a therapist, I've been a writer my whole life. So I really decided to, learn how to write a book. And it's
And
been
that was also part of your healing.
Oh, it was tremendous. Yeah. It actually turns out funny. I kept saying, wow, this is the worst part of my life that I'm writing about. And it's funny. It came out very funny.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so yes,
Yeah.
it's,
And also too, something you said, you also have to be willing to share all that. It's one thing to write it as a journal. It's another thing to put it out as a book, and other people are going to read some of your innermost thoughts.
Mhm. Somebody who read it actually said to me, I can't believe you actually wrote that stuff out. But it's really, I think it's very helpful in some ways to understand that people are going to feel all these similar feelings. And that's part of, it's specifically might be, the details might be changing, but people feel abandoned, people feel sad, people feel shame, people feel like, oh, other people have the good lives and I somehow didn't have it. Um, people feel guilty. It's like all these feelings.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. I know I have, is the comparison. We say we're not going to, but our whole society is all about comparison. Look at that person on TV and look at what they look like and look at this and look at, I mean, it's a hard one, but as you've said, we're going to be happier people if we don't do that.
Mhm. Life is very messy. This is one of my, it's a very cliche now, but life is messy. And part of my goal now is just embrace the mess. It's not like you can
That's
fix
a very good advice, Virginia. I can use that. Very good. How would you like to leave our show today with our listeners? What's your message?
So I really think I want to say people need to, as much as possible, share with people that they care about and they trust about what's happening for them when they're having a hard time. Don't
Mm,
hold all that hard sadness to yourself,
mm,
and get the help that you need.
yeah, thank you. And the book um, again, tell us the book and where people can get it.
If you must go, I wish you triplets, and
Mhm.
it's available on um, you know, all major retailers. And my website is virginiadeluca.com, and my email is there if you want to
Mm.
connect with.
Yeah. And I think, I think the message too is something else you said is be gentle with yourself,
Mhm,
particularly when things are messy and not so easy. Just say, wait a minute, I'm going to take a pause here. I'm going to go for a walk,
mhm.
do
Yeah.
some breathing, call a friend, plant a garden, put some flowers, right? So all of that really makes a difference. Yeah, really appreciate it. And one more thing before you go, what would your advice be to somebody who might want to write a memoir?
Find a writing group. It's or find
Mm.
a teacher who also is teaching a class. It's really a wonderful thing to do. And it really is useful to really hear. So when we're writing a journal or we're doing like that, we want to hear when we're trying to give it to somebody else, we want to hear how that person is hearing it, which is,
Received it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's another healing part of working with people and kind of working in community and
mhm,
sharing your story in a safe space,
that's
right?
right.
In a safe space, right? Thank you so much for being on the program, Virginia. It was very
Thank
wonderful, very inspiring. Thank you. Stay on the line for a minute. That wraps up this edition of the Patricia Raskin Positive Living Show. To find me and get a copy of my newsletter so you can see these wonderful guests, I send it out the first day of every month. It'll go out July 1st. 2025. And you can write to me, Patricia at patriciaraskin.com. Now, if you'd like to get your positive message out the way that I help so most of my guests do, and you'd like to do your own podcast, contact me. I help people put together their podcasts. I've interviewed over 5,000 people in my career, and I'd love to help you create your podcast. So contact me, Patricia at patriciaraskin.com. Okay. Remember, stay healthy, stay happy, get the support you need, and know you can make your dreams come true. Until next time, I'm Patricia Raskin. Bye for now.